All right, so today is lecture 16. Today we're going to be talking about slope. Uh, More specifically, we're going to be talking about finding slope from 2 points. So let's start off with the definition of slope. Okay, so slope is going to measure, it's going to measure the steepness of a line. Slope is going to measure the steepness of a line. More specifically, the slope of any line is going to be the ratio. Ratio means we have a fraction. It's going to be ratio of the change in the y coordinates. Ratio of the change in the y coordinates. So the y coordinates are always going to be on top, and the x coordinates are always going to be on the bottom of the fraction. So it's going to be the ratio of the change in the y coordinates to the corresponding change in the x coordinates. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be measuring what the change in the y coordinates is. That's going to be placed on top of the fraction. And then we're going to be measuring the change in the x coordinates. And that's going to be at the bottom of the fraction. So the formula for slope is going to be slope. Oftentimes we'll use the letter m, lowercase m. And that's going to be equal to the change in y. We put that on the top of the fraction. And then on the bottom of the fraction, we're going to have the change in x. So another way you can write that is delta y on the top of the fraction and delta x at the bottom of the fraction. So this is going to be the Greek letter delta, or d. That's going to stand for change. So that literally means change in y on the top and change in x on the bottom. So what is change in y? That's going to be y2 minus y1 at the top. y2 minus y1. And then what's the change in x going to be at the bottom of the fraction? That's going to be x2 minus x1. So you can write it that way. And that's going to be for the 2 points x1, y1. And the second point x2, y2. The 1s and the 2s are just subscripts. They tell you which point the x value and y value are coming from. So if they have a subscript of 2, they're coming from the second point. And if they have a subscript of 1, they're coming from the first point. We can also write this formula with the 1s coming first. You could also say y1 minus y2. So you can change the order at the top. That's fine, as long as you change the order at the bottom. so it goes the same way. So at the bottom, you're going to have x1 minus x2. So just as long as the order is consistent, that's all you need to know. Another way that you can think about this is, since you have the change in y on the top, that's going to be how far up you go or down you go. We say rise is going to be on top. Since we have the change in x at the bottom, that's going to be your run. So that's how we get rise over run. So any of these formulas will work to figure out what slope is going to be. And what we're going to do next is we're going to look at our notes and we're going to try a few of the practice problems from those. So let's take a look at those on the next slide. Okay, we're going to be looking at number 1 in our notes. So the first one gives us 2 ordered pairs. We have -5, +3. The first number is always going to be our x value, and the second number in parentheses is going to be our y value. It gives us another ordered pair, 2, 1. 2 is going to be the x value, as always, and the 1 is going to be our y value. And what we want to use is we want to use the slope formula. M equals y2 minus y1. That's going to be what's at the top of the fraction. And then the bottom of the fraction is going to be x2 minus x1. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the first ordered pair, and we're going to give x and y a subscript of 1. So x1 is going to be -5, and y1 is going to be 3. That's our first ordered pair. That's why we have 1s on the x's and the y's. But on the next ordered pair, this is our second ordered pair, so I'm going to label this as x2 and y2. So now that we know what numbers correspond to which letters, we can use the slope formula to figure out what the slope of this line is going to be. So I start off with an m. On the top of the fraction, I'm going to have y2 minus y1. What is y2? That's going to be this 1 right here. And then we're subtracting the next y coordinate, which is going to be y1. That's going to be this 3 right here. So we always subtract the y values on top of the fraction. On the bottom of the fraction, we're going to have the x coordinates. We're going to take x2, which is just going to be 2, and then we're going to be subtracting a -5, because that's what the first x value is. So we have 1 minus 3 on top. That's going to be -2. The bottom of the fraction is going to have 2 minus a -5. We have 2 negatives, so we actually have a double negative. That's going to mean a positive. So it's actually 2 plus 5. And that's going to give us 7 at the bottom. So this is going to be our answer, -2/7. It's a fraction, but more specifically, it's a reduced fraction, which means we can't reduce it down anymore. It's already in simplest form. Notice it's a negative number. Whenever we have a negative slope, that's going to correspond to a line that is sloping downwards. So as you go from left to right, the line is going to go down. and that is the sign of a negative slope. Okay, let's try number 2. Number 2 gives us 4, 3, and 1, negative 1. So the first thing I want to do is I want to label all my x values. So this one is going to be an x value, the 4, and this is going to be the second x value, which is 1. So I've got x1 and x2. Next, I want to label my y values. My first y value is going to be 3. And my second y value is going to be negative 1. So now putting the numbers on top, I need all the y values. That's going to be y2, negative 1, minus 3. That's my first y value. And at the bottom, I'm going to have x2 minus x1, 1 minus 4. So at the top, I have negative 1 minus 3. That's going to give me negative 4. On the bottom of the fraction, I have 1 minus 4, and that's going to give me negative 3. So now notice how I have a negative number on the top and the bottom. So the negatives are going to cancel out when I divide to give me a positive number, a positive 4/3. That's going to be my slope for this one. I can't simplify this fraction anymore. It's a positive fraction, which means we're going to have a positive slope for this line. It's going to look like this. Whenever you have a positive slope, that means as you go from left to right on the line, it's going to be sloping upwards. So that's what a positive slope is going to look like. It goes up as you move from left to right, whereas a negative slope will move down as you move from left to right. Okay. The next one we're going to try is number 3. So number 3 gives us 2 points. They're going to be 2, 5 and 2, negative 6. Notice how the x values are equal. That's going to play a big role when we try to figure out what the slope is going to be. Now, the first thing we need to do is we need to write out our formula, which is y2 minus y1 on top, divided by x2 minus x1 at the bottom. That's our slope formula. We need to label our x values. Our first x value is going to be x1, that's 2. And then our second value, x2, is also going to be 2. My y values are going to be y1 and y2, 5 and negative 6. So for the first ordered pair, I'm always going to have x1, y1. And on the second ordered pair, I'm going to have x2, y2. And now I just put the numbers in the right places. I have y2 minus y1 on top. That's going to be negative 6 minus 5. On the bottom of the fraction, I'm going to have x2 minus x1. That's going to be 2 minus 2. So now subtracting at the top, we have negative 6 minus 5. That's going to be negative 11 in the numerator. In the denominator, I'm going to have 2 minus 2, which is 0. So what's negative 11 divided by 0? Since we can't divide by 0, this is going to be undefined. Undefined. So we're not even going to get a number for our answer, since we're dividing by 0 at the bottom. Whenever you have an undefined slope, you're going to have a vertical line. And since a vertical line doesn't have a slope, we say that this is an undefined slope. That's just going to be a vertical line. Typically, the equation for a vertical line is going to be x equals c, where c is just some constant, some number. So whenever you graph the equation x equals c, you're going to get a vertical line that has undefined slope. All right, the last one we're going to do is number 4. So this one, it gives us 2 ordered pairs, -6, 8, and 4, 8. Now this time, I'm going to do it the opposite way. Instead of having y2 minus y1 on top, I'm going to have y1 minus y2. And then on the bottom of the fraction, I'm going to have the same order, x1 minus x2. Just to show you that if you change the order on both the numerator and the denominator, the answer is not going to change. So now let's label our 2 points. We have x1, y1, and x2, y2. So on top of the fraction, I'm going to have y1 minus y2. What would that be? That would just be 8 minus 8. On the bottom of the fraction, I'm going to have x1 minus x2. That's going to be -6 minus 4. So at the top of the fraction, you're going to get 0. That's 8 minus 8. On the bottom of the fraction, you're going to have -10. A +10 if you did it the other way. And then 0 divided by -10 is 0. And that's going to be our answer, 0. Now, whenever your slope is 0, your line isn't going to be vertical, but it's going to be the opposite. It's going to be horizontal. So it'll look like this. This is a line with 0 slope. Whenever you have a 0 slope, that means you're going to have a horizontal line. So I'm just going to write horizontal line. In order to graph a horizontal line, you're going to use the equation y equals c, where y is going to be the variable and c is going to be a number, also known as a constant. So finding slope between 2 points is fairly easy. You just need to know the right formula and how to use it. Okay, that's all I'm going to cover today. If you have any questions about today's class or the classwork from this week, you can go ahead and put that down in the chat box and I will get to you soon. You do have 2 assignments that are going to be due on Sunday, so let's talk about those. The first one, what we covered today, is you're going to be finding slope from 2 points. Finding slope from 2 points. So you're going to be using x1, y1, and x2, y2. You're going to be using the formula y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. That's going to be the slope formula. The second assignment we'll go over on Wednesday. You're going to be finding slope from a graph. Slope from a graph. And typically with this one, you'll be using the definition rise over run. All right, that's all I had to say. Class dismissed. I will see you on Wednesday.